Do you lie awake in bed wondering if you are food safety compliant, wondering what would happen if you got someone sick, and what would happen to your business if someone wanted to sue you for that? Never fear. We're not going to live in fear. We are going to get the information. And on today's podcast, we are talking all things food safety with Scott Roi. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. This is going to be a really great one to keep in your toolkit, your tool belt as you develop your food business. I'm really excited to welcome Scott Roi, and we are going to talk all things food safety. And I know that probably, that might not be the funnest, sexiest part of your business, but it is so important. So welcome, Scott. Really glad you're here.
Thank you.
And you have been in the food safety world since 1997. And we were talking before we started recording. I was like, how did you get into this? And you said you started your own ice cream shop and then you had multiples of those. And so it sounds like you just had to learn on the job because somebody had to do it.
That's exactly it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
it
amazing. I mean, a lot of people would rather outsource that, but it sounds like you had some interest in it.
well, I wouldn't call it in the beginning as much interest as it was. I didn't have the budget to to have somebody
Fair.
else come in and do it. So it was much cheaper to take the time, learn it, do the coursework, get the certifications, and those types of things.
Yeah.
Um, so it was out of necessity.
Fair. Yeah. And you have become my go-to person that when someone says, I need a recall plan, I need a HACCP plan, I need a GMP plan, whatever kind of food safety related thing, I always connect them with you. We've been, this is actually our first time meeting and like seeing each other because we usually just email, but you are the easiest person I've found ever to work with, and you are accommodating and quick. And I think, not everybody is great at working with like early stage people who are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So thank you for being such a great resource for my clients and members.
Oh, you're very welcome. And
Yeah. I
I
don't even
enjoy,
remember how do we even got connected. I cannot remember. It's
I
been
have no idea. It was a long time ago.
it was. But I'm grateful because finding a good food safety person that is responsive, and also I love that you're an independent. So, rather than going with an agency, I feel like your fees and everything are very reasonable for my clients. So appreciate
Oh, well,
that.
well, good. My big interests, I would say, more than the food safety side, is the small business side and helping
Mhm.
people start up and teach them to do, what I did many years ago is,
Yeah.
um, this is, I can give them the building blocks to start with. Um, in a nice package. I think I've made it for food safety anyway, fairly easy to understand, even though it still is quite an elephant to
Yeah.
bring into the into the mix. But
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be hard. There's a lot of details. The food safety plan components are easy. It's executing it that takes the work and the discipline.
Fair, although some of us would very much argue about this. Maybe they're straightforward,
Well,
but
well,
weeding
okay.
through
So
the language.
let me give you an example here. The most important thing is to say what you do and then do what you say. So there is no hard and fast correct or incorrect food safety plan. It's basically what you feel your risks are and what you need to do to cover those risks. So essentially, a food safety plan is a I'm going to scrub my floors once a week and I'm going to make my employees wash their hands. Done. There's my food safety plan. That is a valid food safety plan, and you're not going to get penalized as long as you do those things that you said you were going to do. Now, when an auditor, inspector, customer comes in the door, they may say, well, okay, Scott, we really need you to do a little more than this. But they're not going to smack me around.
Like, I
They're
have
going to
a food
say
safety plan.
this isn't good enough, and the next time we come back, we're going to want to see this, and this.
Yeah,
Um, so that's what I'm saying, that the food safety plan part of it isn't as hard as the execution of it.
sure.
And
Making sure things
every
get
company
done,
is,
corded,
yeah.
done to the standard that you say. So let's talk about just, when people are just starting out, and I know that the complication that comes in, and I've been doing this for long enough, is that it's so product dependent, right? So somebody comes to you or me with a salsa versus a cookie versus a dairy product versus a meat product or seafood, right? It gets like endless combinations of
Well,
things. But
yes and no. It
okay,
depends what part of the of food safety we're talking about. A recall plan is pretty standard across the board.
okay.
You could be selling shrimp, you could be doing chocolate pudding. It's going to be the same mechanisms, the same paperwork, same process. However, if we're talking about a HACCP plan, yes, 100% entirely, not just product specific, but where you're getting your ingredients. Um, for example, we know that cinnamon coming out of Indonesia, for whatever reason, contains glass. I don't know where it comes from, but there's glass in it when you buy it in bulk. Um, so,
My
yeah, yeah.
gosh.
So you got to sift your cinnamon to get the chunks of glass out. Um, I've found it 3 times. And
Wow.
so, depending on where your ingredient is coming from, there may be certain plant diseases that are prevalent in that area that we need to be concerned about. There may be foreign material issues. Um, Raw materials coming out of China aren't always the most sanitary, so we need to be real careful about kill steps on those. So, combination of the product that you're making, and then where you're getting your ingredients from.
Yeah. So if I'm just, and I know this does not apply to cottage food because cottage food is like its own, it's got it, yeah,
Yeah.
own safety, own things that it has to do. So we're talking about, let's start with people self-producing. So they are manufacturing in their own, in a commissary kitchen or some kind of commercial kitchen. What are some of, like, you already talked about a recall plan. Is that required at just like the base level? Like I'm selling to farmers markets. I'm selling, let's go ahead and say I'm selling across country online, and maybe I'm selling like regional, kind of small wholesale. So what do I need?
It's so depending on your size and who you're selling to will dictate what you need. If you're just selling to a farmer's market and direct to consumer, you don't need anything like that. There's no um, regulation that says you need to have a recall plan, a food safety plan, anything like that. Some municipalities say, well, you need to get a license for $25. You need to take our courses, those kinds of things. So that's all going to be local to your county or state. But at a federal level, before we get into food safety requirements from the FDA, you need to be a sizable company. I mean, for a farm, you got to sell $100,000 of the same. No, it's $25,000 of the same product. So when I'm selling $25,000 of carrots, now I have to have a food safety plan for my carrots. So you're talking about much bigger businesses to comply with FDA rules. Now, where the exception is that you have the FDA over here, um, and then you have, let's say, Safeway over here. Safeway is going to say, I don't care if you only sell $10 a year of this product. If you're selling to me, you're going to need to have GMPs. You're going to need to have a recall plan. You might need to have a HACCP plan. So industry will dictate what you need to do, but long before the FDA will.
Okay.
But what I do is all of my plans are FDA compliant so that when you are a $250,000 company one day, you don't have to change anything. You're already doing it.
Yeah.
So,
Do you happen to
um,
know the limits, like what would trigger if I was just selling direct to consumer for like a salsa or some kind of packaged product?
um,
Do you happen to know that?
$1 million is the limit, but you can get exceptions to that depending
Okay.
on your industry.
Okay.
So, like I said, you got to be big.
Yeah.
Um, where you
And so that's
now,
what I find is people are small and they're they have their county license, their health, with the health department
mhm,
or the state. So um they're just going along and everything's fine. But it's when they start sell all of a sudden they get that Whole Foods account or they get I know I
yes,
sent somebody to you that was Costco was interested in
yes,
them.
yeah,
And they've just been like you said, like small, they're under the million for sure. And then they're like, what? I have to do all
yeah.
this.
Yeah, and depending on the chain you're going into, for example, if you're selling to Whole Foods, they have kind of a scaled down version of a food safety plan that they require you to comply with.
Hmm.
Costco, they're looking at a full blown food safety plan with a GMP audit before they'll buy from
Yeah. And I am hearing more from Whole Foods that even small brands are having to do a full audit, which is
you. Okay.
like, what does an audit cost typically?
An audit, depending on where you are, because you pay for the audit and then you pay the travel and the hotel for the auditor to come out.
Yeah.
Um, Anywhere between I'm going to say 900 and maybe $1,600 to 1,800
Okay.
to get an audit done.
Right. Plus working with somebody like yourself to do all the plans, because you got to have a
Yeah,
plan to audit
yeah, yeah,
audit. So I think that could be at least a $3,000 to $5,000 investment that people don't always anticipate when they get that. They're like, wow, I got into,
yeah,
you know, Kroger, even if it's just 10 stores, but they may require these kind of
yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah. Kroger definitely would require a GMP audit as well. And
Okay.
there's different levels of. I won't go into this too much, but just so it's kind of out there, the GMP audit is the lowest level food safety hurdle to cross.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you
Then,
about this for sure. So,
yeah, yeah.
what does
So there's
that
other
stand for
programs.
and what is it?
Yeah, GMP is good manufacturing practices, and um, that's all anybody really is going to want to do because others get much more costly. Um, there's different programs out there that have, they're 7 levels deep, and we're talking about, creating high pressure rooms so that when you open the door, the air only goes out, and yeah, things that we don't want to deal with at our side.
Yeah.
So GMP audit is the focus and definitely the most inexpensive. Um, that an entire GMP food safety plan um, would probably be in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000 to create a fully implementable plan. No, probably a little lower than that. I'd say 2,000 to 2,500 for most companies.
Okay.
And then your audit on top of that. So your ballpark 3 to 5,000 is right on to for the whole package of
Okay.
audit and plan.
Yeah. Okay. So we start with a GMP and
Mm-hmm.
then so some people, and it's funny because I hear people say it's that H2AACP or like I hear all sorts of crazy pronunciations for this, but it's HACCP,
It's HACCP, yes.
HAACP.
Yeah.
What does that stand for and what is it?
That's stands for hazards analysis and critical control points. So this was actually a system developed by NASA in the 60s. So it's not strictly food. The food industry just adopted it because it's such a good hazards analysis plan. But basically, what it is, it's a whole program where you look at all of your inputs. So I mentioned, the ingredients and where they're coming from. You look at your inputs. You look at your processes. Okay, now we bring in all this raw veggies in. Well, we need to wash them because we have no idea what's on them. Could be a chemical, it could be, physical contaminants like glass in the cinnamon. Um, it could be something biological. We've got salmonella on it. So you look at all those hazards and you say, for each hazard, what could happen? Could somebody get sick? Could somebody get injured? Could somebody die? And you evaluate your process and the ingredients. You come up with where your critical points are. So we know if we don't wash the carrot, we could be passing on E. coli. So we better wash the carrot. And so going through that whole analysis, what I do is come up with a finished plan that says, here's your ingredients, here's your process. During your process, to make sure we don't hurt anybody, get anybody sick, or kill anybody, these are the things that need to be done. If this thing is not done according to how it should be done, you cannot sell the product. So that's what a HACCP plan does and what it means. It's basically a do or die plan. Now, what the FDA introduced when they came out with FSMA, which is their version of the new food safety program, is they have preventive controls. So those are things that are not do or die points. They're things that you need to put in your process so that you do not have a do or die point down the road. So washing those carrots, let's come back to that, washing the carrots can be a preventive control. And so we don't need to be at risk for a recall because Sally forgot to wash the carrots. Because we have another step farther down, we're actually going to cook the carrots, and then we're going to have a filtration system for the carrot juice that catches the glass that came in from the cinnamon that we put in the carrot juice. So,
what are we making here, Scott? This is an
I
interesting
know.
recipe.
I hope you're taking notes because it might be good.
Well, it could be a really good carrot cake.
Yeah, cinnamon carrot juice. I don't know. So your HACCP plan basically does that, and you have that in place with record keeping that says, yes, we made sure that when we boiled it, it got to 180 degrees. It is documented. We have the person who documented it. We did, our job on this.
Mhm. Okay.
And another thing I'll add about these kinds of food safety plans is they have more use as a CYA. I'll say cover your butt.
Yes,
This
100%. Cover your
CYB.
ass.
Yes, yeah. Than they do for for food safety compliance. In terms of somebody coming to look at what you're doing. There are all kinds of people out there. They're going to call you up and say, "Hey, Scott, I had your cinnamon carrot juice, and I got sick for a week afterwards." And then you can say, "Okay, well, tell me about it. Take some information down. Let me check my records." You go back, you did everything you did. There's nothing that could have possibly made this person sick. You call it back and say, I can send you our manufacturing records. This product was cooked to 180 degrees, which killed every possible disease you could have had. So you must have gotten it from something else. But thank you for, giving us a call. You won't hear from them again. So they're going to go down the line to the next thing they ate and see if they can get some money out of that company.
Yeah. And I think, well, I have two kinds of people. Some people that I work with just are like head in the sand, like, I don't want to know. I don't want to deal with it. I like put blinders on. And then I do have some people that go the opposite, where they then get paralyzed by all the things. And I think what's important what I really want my founders and folks I work with to hear who are listening is like, there is a certain level of responsibility that you have when you are creating a food product. This is not a t-shirt. This is
Right.
this is something that is going in people's bodies. And at home, you are dealing with like such a small scale of equipment, and I mean, although they do say our home kitchens are the dirtiest, the dirtiest places, right? But it's so much different when you take it into this manufacturing world, and you do have a responsibility for record keeping, for documentation, and you are exposed to a certain amount of risk. Certainly some products are going to lend themselves to more risk than others.
Hmm.
But even the most innocuous product, like, maybe a snickerdoodle cookie, right, could still pose that there could be something that gets recalled or, some kind of contamination that happened, like you said, the glass and the cinnamon or something like
Hmm.
that. So, it really doesn't matter, your product at every level. I think like I want you to treat it with your business with respect of like, I am giving people things that they put in their body, and I want
Hmm.
to be sure
Yeah.
it's safe for them.
Yeah. And probably the biggest thing that people aren't aware of, I'm doing training all the time, is about cross contamination. And we know the big allergens, peanut butter, and wheat, gluten for celiac, and all that. But there's a lot of other ones out there. For example, I was just in our restaurant, and we were talking about the toppings for burgers, and people were using a gloved hand to grab a tomato, put it on the burger, grab some onions, put it on the grab lettuce, put it on the burger, and we looked at that and said, well, wait a minute. There's people who have allergens to nightshades, and a tomato is a nightshade. They
Hmm.
don't get tomato on the burger. So if you've got tomato on your hand because they wanted onions on their burger, we've just cross contaminated that with, not a lot, but we have cross contaminated. So we said we need to change the system. We need tongs in every bin, and you use the tongs to put that condiment, on the burger, because we I know people. Actually, my dad has a severe onion allergy.
Let's say
Um,
onions are
it,
a big one
yeah,
too.
yeah, it's strange. He can eat onion powder, but a raw onion, he just gets a bit on his finger and he's got a bellyache for a day. So
Wow.
there's things like that. Home kitchens, maybe you're making a gluten-free product and you also do gluten products. Well, you need to think about, okay, I need to clean my kitchen and then make my gluten-free product first, because I'm going to have flour residue, on the countertop, on utensils, on me,
Yeah.
from making that gluten product. So cross contamination is a big thing that's often overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about GMP, we talked about HACCP. I I hesitate to even get more into FSMA. Um, But I guess I do want to ask. I feel like during the pandemic, I was hearing lots more about like tighter and tighter, like the FDA really getting tighter about food safety and starting to require some new things from companies. Has some of that been put on pause, or is there gonna be more coming down?
There's more coming out. There's actually, I think it's Rule 204 that just came out. I'm actually signed up for a webinar on it tomorrow to to find out all the
Okay, so you're gonna
implications.
figure out.
Um, I doubt it's going to affect small companies like the ones we're talking to, at all. The FDA is short on staff. They're short on funding, like, well, now all the government agencies are, but they aren't the ones who are going to be enforcing FSMA or these new rules. What they usually do is, for small companies, is they have a contract with the state, and your state inspector. Most people see their state inspectors, in their shared kitchens once a month. This is kind of an odd thing, because the state inspector will show up on Monday to do your state inspection, and then they'll say, "We'll see you tomorrow to do the federal inspection." And then they come in on Tuesday with their federal badges and say, "Hi, I'm here to do the federal inspection. We're just going to do what we did yesterday." But
Feel
so,
like this is where we could eliminate some
yeah, if they could combine
bureaucracy.
those,
Let's
yeah.
let's do
So
that at the same time.
um, and uh, and I think a lot of the states are now taking it instead of taking the hammer approach. When they see something wrong, they're taking the other approach of education and saying, okay, this is great what you've got going, but you got a few holes here. We're concerned about this, and this, so we want you to work on that. And they kind of act as a consultant to help you improve your food safety plan. So
Mhm.
instead of coming in to find as many things as they can to write you up on, um, that's where we come back to say what you do and do what you say. If you do that, you will not be written up
Right.
with a violation. Now, like I said, it doesn't mean you don't have gaps and holes and you need to do some things, but those are the things that you'll be educated on. And the state will say, um, you know, your GMP plan is great. You've got bathrooms, but we'd really like you to have in your GMP plan that you put soap and paper towels in your bathroom. Um, Simple fix, but those are the kinds of things that they want to see. Um, and so, because that aligns with the federal GMP guidelines that, you need
Okay.
to state those kinds of things. So, um, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be any harder under the new rules that they've added to it. I think most of it is about tracing where raw food is coming from. Now with the big farms, they can tell you, which field and which row that carrot got pulled out of. The farmers, those big farms, need to keep those kinds of records. So that's where a lot of the emphasis is, because we've had, all of the rash of big industrial food poisoning, and
Yeah.
that's where the problems in our system are. Your
Predominantly,
local
yeah. Yeah.
companies that aren't processing a tanker full of corn syrup, um, aren't going to have the
Fair.
same problems as somebody at home making their gluten-free carrot cinnamon cookie.
Right, right. Fair enough. Well, the last thing I want to talk about, and you touched on it already, is that traceability piece and a recall plan. And in food business success, I include a template for a recall plan, and I talk about traceability and the responsibility of the manufacturer um, to be, documenting where all of their ingredients come from. But I always say, like, listen, you can do it yourself, but it is really nice. Like, go to Scott, he will put it all together and make sure it's correct. And to have a food safety person listed on your recall plan, I think is a really nice benefit. Again, of that
Yeah, it does
CYA.
give it immediate credibility with your new clients that you're going to be selling to. Um, yeah, the recall plan, it's a lot of paperwork. The recall plan that I put out, it's actually, I think, 11 different documents. Um, but all you really need to do is follow what is written in one document on one page. The
Right.
rest of it is mostly just in case material. So if you did have to do a recall, I give you all the templates, the one you need to send to the FDA, the one you need to send to your customers, the one you need to send out to media, how to do your counts and things like that when you're bringing everything back in. But the crux of your recall plan is tracking your ingredients in and tracking your sales out. Because what the recall plan essentially does is it says, for some reason, well, there's two ways a recall can happen. One is coming from the customer end. Something you produce, somebody calls up, 10 people call up and say, oh my gosh, I got so sick um, when I ate your cinnamon carrot cookie. So then you're thinking, okay, we have a problem. I need to find out where the rest of those are and get them back so we don't make any more people sick. That's the simplest form of the recall. The other side is you get a notice from the farmer that says, hey, those carrots we sent you? Somehow they got DDT all over them. And people are dying everywhere. You need to recall. It's nothing that can be washed off. It's in the carrot. You need to recall every product you made with those carrots. Now, you made carrot juice, you made carrot cinnamon cookies, you made carrots in your coleslaw with carrots in it. You use these carrots everywhere, or maybe you didn't. That's what you need to know. So that's why
Right.
it's so critical to say I used this lot number of carrots in the cookies, and I use
Right.
this much
And it might not
because
be all of it. It could just be that one
right, you might
lot,
have gotten
right?
20 pounds of carrots in and you used 5 over here, you used 10 over there. You didn't use any in this other batch. So you need to be able to track that down and say, where is my problem that this farmer just created for me?
Yeah.
So that's called forward tracking and backward tracking. And you
Okay.
need to be able to do both of those things with your recall plan.
Yeah. And it is, I guess the last question I want to ask, and it ties into this, is, it is your responsibility as the business owner, as the maker, to be monitoring recalls that come in through the FDA. And I know that, we talked about that, unless you're at that $1 million and you're not doing, national or kind of these larger chain wholesales, that you might not need all of the GMP and the HACCP and all of that. But you still need to register with the FDA. And
Yeah.
there is a responsibility, and if you're going over state lines, technically your facility is needs to be an FDA like inspected facility. And and so maybe can you sh like shed a little light on that piece because and it does come back to, I am mon as the owner, I am monitoring the recalls that are coming out,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the nuts that you put in those cookies, could
Yeah.
get recalled. That happens. And so
Yeah.
the obligation for the founder there.
Yeah. Um, and it doesn't need to be as tedious as needing to follow the FDA recalls. Because if you're buying your food from a distributor, they're required by law to notify you of anything
Okay,
you buy.
great.
Um, if you have a frequent shopper card like a Kroger card, they track everything you buy. I mean, it's kind of scary, but kind of good if you're a producer. They
Yeah.
track everything you buy. And if they see that you bought those carrots, last month that they are now on recall, you will get a notice that those
Okay.
carrots have been recalled.
That's great. Good to
So
know.
that's an advantage to, loss of privacy on that point. um, so um, I just want to address that. And I'm coming back to your question, which was,
Well, just about making sure that, you are like if you're
oh,
selling over state lines, like you do need to register. It's free,
yeah.
but register with the FDA.
Yeah, and I learned something interesting about that process. They refused to register my dairy plant. Um, I
Oh,
went
that's
around and
good.
around for 6 months. They said, "No, we're not going to register you." Um, the reason is even though we're selling wholesale to grocery stores out of the dairy plant is part of the restaurant, and therefore they take into account where the sales are coming from. So if 50% of the sales are direct to consumer via the restaurant, 50% or more, then you don't have a food plant, which seems ridiculous to me.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
anyway, I can't register my dairy plant with the FDA. I'm registered with the state and we get inspected and all of that.
Right.
But for some reason, the FDA wanted nothing to do with me for the dairy plant. Um, but if 50% or more of your sales are coming from a product that you're manufacturing and distributing into distribution channels and not selling direct to the customer, then yes, you need to do an FDA registration, and it's free. You have to renew it every 2 years, and it's basically just giving them information about who you are, where you're located, what you're manufacturing, and I think who you're selling to. And
Yeah, it's
they make it
pretty it's
into
pretty
a
simple.
15-minute process to get through, but that's all the information is
Yeah.
on
Plus a
it.
DUNS number now, which is
Yeah, and a
actually
DUNS number, yes. Yeah.
so yeah, and I've had another guest come into our membership and talk us through the whole FDA registration. But I think
Okay.
it's good to mention here that like, yeah, when you are selling across state lines and certain channels, that um, yeah, you need to make yourself aware to the FDA so that
Yeah.
if things were to happen, they can find you and they know about you. So,
So, yeah, I think they use
yes.
it more for census data. You know, how
Mm,
many food manufacturers and how what size are they and where do they make it?
yeah, for sure. Well, this is super helpful, kind of helping us navigate food safety at a high level. I think it's always good for me to reiterate, the importance, the responsibility of this. And yes, you can figure out a lot of this stuff on your own, or I'm a big fan of finding your who's. People like myself who are a who then know people like you, and now people know you, but like go find a who. This is something, in my opinion, like you got way more stuff that you need to do as a as a brand owner and go spend your time getting sales and make an investment to go work with somebody like Scott to just get this stuff done and do it correctly. And you're going to get it done so much faster than a layperson.
Yeah. My first food safety plan, I think, took me over a year to get right,
Yeah.
right for our business.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's
so
a lot and it's complex and the language. I mean, I just personally don't have time for that stuff. It's like anything
yeah,
like that. I'm just like, go find a who can help me with this, make that
yeah,
investment. And then I know like CYA, I know it's done right. I know I have somebody to
yeah.
contact if have questions. So this has been super helpful. We're gonna bring you into Fuel here coming soon, so people will be able to ask you their questions specifically and get more support from you. I'll put your contact information in the show notes as well. So if people want to reach out, just let them know you heard him on the podcast. And so yeah, you'll probably have some more people coming your way.
All right, great. Well, thank you
All
very
right.
much for the
Yeah.
invitation to talk with you.
My pleasure. Yeah, this was so good. It's so fun to finally meet you and
Yes, yeah.
thank you. Thank you
It's
for being willing to do what you do. Like it's not for
uh,
everyone. Appreciate it, Scott.
all right. Thanks, Sari.
What a great conversation with Scott. That actually, I feel that was really fun, right? Talking about food safety. I learned some new things. I hope you learned a lot. And it's such an important part of your business, right? I want you to take responsibility for it. I want you to do what you need to do. Don't freak out, right? Your next step is not to freak out, but it's to say, what is it that I don't have? What is it I need? How can I get it done, either myself or working with someone like Scott? Inside Food Business Success, I have a whole section on food safety. I walk you through how to register with the FDA. We have a recall template. I have traceability documents. Like, this is just stuff that needs to become a part of your business. It's not, oh, we have to do this extra work. It's like, no, this is just a part of the manufacturing process. So it's time to take responsibility, make sure you're doing it, come get support. And I would love to see you inside Fuel. And you get to come and talk to Scott in our group and bring your particular questions, which is so fantastic. So that'll be coming up later in 2025. And I'd love for you to join us. And until next time, have an amazing week.